Okay, just for record, that is not that small of a house. Like around the windows here, we have a lot of similar type. Hey everyone, welcome back. It is time for another video today. Today's video is going to be another UK type US comparison. I always really enjoy these videos because it's very interesting to see the differences between two countries that, even though we're very close and we have intertwining history, just how different we really are. Today's video is going to be from the channel called Lost in the Pond, and it's going to be on the full ways British and American houses are different. I'm really looking forward to this because I actually work in construction. That is my day job. So I'm always seeing other people's houses. I'm always in all sorts of styles, $1 million homes, $100,000 homes. We actually recently just built a house from the ground up, completely brand new. So I'm really looking forward to how he explains the U.S. houses, and maybe I can give some perspective with my knowledge. With that being said, you guys know what to do. Make sure you like, comment below what you think of the video, future content, whatever you want. Feel free to share the video. Make sure you hit that notification bell to stay up to date on content from this channel. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing because it really helps out. And with that being said, we're going to go straight into this video and learn about the difference in houses.
And tea drinkers that we are, we love our kettles, don't we? But they're not just any kettles. These are ones you plug in and then hit the switch to turn on the plug, because I forgot to mention that our plug sockets also have switches.
Okay, so yeah, sorry. But I know I just did a video on the plugs. Feel free to check it out if you haven't seen it, between the US and the UK plugs. I don't quite understand why. Maybe one of you guys send me a picture of a British kettle, because we have kettles over here that plug into a socket and they heat water up like in a minute. So I don't understand why people don't think we have that. We do not have to microwave our water. We don't have to use our stove. We're not in the 1960s. We have a freaking kettle and coffee pots and other stuff that heats water up instantly. So share with me what a freaking British kettle is, because I'm so confused why you guys think that we're not up to date, because I don't understand it.
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to houses, the things we live inside. If you're watching this video, it's quite likely you're either inside a house right now, or you're near one, because otherwise you wouldn't probably have internet access quite as easily. To anyone that might be new to this channel, come on in, get yourself a cup of tea. This isn't a genuine offer to come into my house. I'm just saying, join the channel, this is good. And hello to everybody who's been here a long time. Today we're going to look at several ways in which British and American houses are very, very different. Having lived in the United States for over 11 years, I've lived in my fair share of houses here, just as I did in Britain. So I think I have a decent grasp of how houses work. Even tiny ones like this one, which is about 400 square feet. I'm joking, this is a professional studio.
I was gonna say 400 square foot is incredibly tiny. I mean, that is a tiny home.
Don't question me. And so without further ado, let's take a look at 4 ways that British and American houses are very, very different. Neither Britain nor America is devoid of variety when it comes to their housing styles, and that's because, well, with each sort of passing phase of history comes new designs to meet new needs and just new style preferences. And because of this variety, I'm not going to cover every single one of them, because that would keep us all here until next Wednesday, which would be good for my metrics, but not good for your sanity. So let's take a look at how some of the housing styles do vary from country to country. In Britain, a lot of the distinctive styles are also tied up with the period in which they were built. So you could go all the way back to the Tudor period, and you do find Tudor housing dotted around here and there. In fact, if you go to the city of York, for example, there's quite a lot of sort of Tudor buildings there. They're quite ornate with wood paneling, and they're the sort of place that you might imagine that Shakespeare lived. But wood is less indicative of British houses than you would see in America, where wood is actually quite a common material for building houses. In Britain, from about the Georgian period onward, you're going to see quite a lot of brickwork. Georgian period houses absolutely exist. People live in them, but they tend to be these opulent looking houses.
Okay, just for record, that is not that small of a house.
Is that to have notable pops of white rectangle, which are just the windows. It's very nice. They look like dolls' houses that you should live in. But then come the Victorian age, we started moving toward these sort of like orangey brick buildings, right? And a lot of them were terraced houses, which is what Americans would call row houses. And they just look very industrial, right? You could imagine a chimney sweep going up and getting his face covered in soot. And then we move into the Edwardian period, where houses are sort of similar to those of the Victorian age. They're just lighter colours with more chimney sweeps, if Mary Poppins is anything to go by. Now, during World War II, when the Nazis bombed the ever-loving crap out of us, a lot of the houses went boom. And then after World War II, there was a housing boom. And you started to see a build-up of new, more simple houses, kind of like the one I grew up in. Now, that's a castle. That didn't happen. But I grew up in something more like this.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely how I would think of modern homes. A little bit different than here, but that's definitely what we have, a lot of similar type.
That's not Lawrence's actual house. Despite what fairy tales may suggest, most of us have never lived in a chocolate box house, but those do exist. A chocolate box house is the kind of house you might see in the Cotswolds, right? It's very quaint looking, it's got thatch roofing, and it looks like this. And if, like me, you're wondering why it's called a chocolate box house, yet it doesn't look edible, it goes back to the 1950s/60s when chocolate boxes would have on their facade a kind of depiction of a beautiful English countryside. And these types of houses would often feature on said box. Now again, this is by no means an
Now, one thing he just kind of one thing he just kind of went over was the thatched roofs. Obviously, he was saying it's not super common over there, except on old homes. But from my understanding, thatched roof is actually one of the best types of roofing material, along with like clay tiles. I've heard like it can last like 400 or 500 years, so I don't know why we don't use it over here. Well, actually I do. It's probably because of money. You'd have to probably build the beams very strong to hold all the weight of the grass. But if someone knows a little bit more about thatched roofs, please let me know, because I'm really interested to learn more about them. I like the upkeep, how thick it is, and everything like that. So if someone is an expert on thatched roofs, let me know. But that's one thing I've never ever seen a thatched roof in all of America. We mostly have asphalt. That's our most common roof material.
Entire repository of British houses. Neither is the following an entire repository of American houses. It's just the more common ones that you will see when you are here. So Cape Cod houses, you know these types of houses, right? They're the ones with the wood paneling down the side.
Okay, yeah, that is a very, very basic American home. That's pretty much what you see 70% of the time.
I said a moment ago that, you know, America makes good use of wood in this country because there's just so much of it. So many woodlands around the country, and it's a huge country from which to pull that resource, so they do, and it's cheap. But funnily enough, the Cape Cod style has its history.
Okay, I want to pull something up. So on this house, it is made of wood, but the siding actually looks like it's vinyl, which is just plastic. The basement is concrete, the brick is the chimney. So really the only wood material is the trim on the outside, like around the windows here. The door is probably made of metal. The decking is wood. Most of the wood is probably on the interior side. Like this is probably 2x4, 2x6 walls. But this specific house has hardly any wood on the exterior.
English settlers who came here in the 17th century and started building Cape Cod style houses in New England. Now, during the post-World War II period, partly to provide, you know, housing to veterans coming back from war, there was a revival of Cape Cod style housing, and it started to be built not just in New England, but all along the East Coast and in the Midwest, and even out west. Anybody that's seen the Goonies will know that. And it was this style of housing that I first moved into when I moved to the United States. And I've got to say, even despite the Midwest winters, it was really warm. You know, you'd think it would be quite drafty because of all of the gaps in the wood. You could go to specific streets or neighborhoods or areas of the United States and only find these houses for miles and miles. So I lived in one of those, but my grandparents-in-law lived in what is known as a ranch-style house. And these are sort of really low-down buildings, don't typically have 2 floors to them. And once again, these houses became popular after World War II. There was just generally a big sort of boom after World War II.
Yeah, that house here... So just one second. That looks like a very common like 60s and 70s style. I feel like we are starting to go back more into the 2-story homes, but usually a ranch style nowadays would be built because of money. So normally you would put that on a full basement because it's just all concrete, so it's a little cheaper than all the wood. So even though it's not actually sticking up out of the ground 2 stories, you do have like a whole unfinished area that most people finish off after they live in the house for a while. I do feel like more modern homes though nowadays, we're going back towards the building 2 or 3 stories. A lot of the homes built in the 90s have 2 stories.
big sort of boom after World War II, again in the United States in that regard. The 20th century, though, did see more and more revivalism of old styles. So you had, mock Tudor, or should I say revival Tudor, which more or less replicated the kind of Tudor buildings that you would see in England with some differences. And I've seen those types of buildings in Boston, for example. I've also seen them in Indiana. As well as that, the 20th century saw colonial revivalism, though most people don't live in those houses. Maybe one day when I get that grand piano, I'll think about it. And so that's an extremely basic and rudimentary breakdown of some of the different styles that you'll see in each country. But there's one big difference between all of the houses in both countries, and it's this. Let's face it.
Yeah, I have heard that your guys' houses are definitely smaller. Like, I think like 1,000 square foot's pretty average. I think over here is like 1,700 square foot.
It's time to face up to some home truths. Compared to America, Britain is microscopic. The United States is absolutely massive and needs to be stopped. And the same is true of each country's average house size. Right, so in the United States, houses just tend to be way more spacious. And we're not just talking about millionaire houses here. We're talking about your average house. So the average size of an American single-family home is approximately 1,600 square feet. In the UK, we're looking at an average of about 900 square feet. So why the difference? Well, one reason is population density. In Britain, we're all a bit packed together. Actually, that partially accounts for why everything is smaller in Britain. Not everything, not the cups. But in America, there's just so much land, and relative to that land, so few people. So, make them as large as you want, and they do. They're huge. But also, a large majority of American houses are relatively new, meaning that they were able to benefit from, building methods and materials that other countries like Britain were not. And the post-war expansion of American highways meant that this was enhanced even more. Those materials could be moved around the country more easily, and of course, this ushered in a more grand housing development. Now, all size aside, try saying that after 10 tepid tequilas, things become subtly different once you're inside the houses of either country.
So yeah, like you mentioned before, I think America really benefited from the amount of wood we had. It is interesting to see some of the old geographical maps of the US. Like certain states were just completely full of woods, just packed. And nowadays it's been opened up for loggers came through, and a lot of the trees got pushed down for farming. So we actually don't have near the amount of woods that America once had. There used to be a little saying that a squirrel could jump from I think it was coast to coast through the trees or something like that. I'm not for sure. But also, the thing is, again, working in construction, to add like from 1,000 square foot to 1,500 square foot is not the biggest price difference. It might be 30 or 40,000, but in the price of an average home being built at 150, 200,000, it's not that much of a difference to upgrade your house to be just a little bit bigger, because you already have the crew there, everyone's already building. It's just literally just the cost of materials and the labor of putting everything together. Me personally, like I live in a 1,100 square foot home, but with my kids, I think it's more of the layout of my house. But like with the kids and stuff, it doesn't seem like that big of a home. It seems pretty small. So for me, 16 or 1,700 square foot is the average size. To me, it's not that big of a house. Now, when you start getting into 2,500 square foot, then I start seeing a ton of wasted space. But on an average of 1,600 square foot with a family, most of the homes are pretty packed. So it would be kind of interesting to see maybe some pictures, or someone to kind of say, like, obviously you guys have families. It's just you guys just don't have as much stuff around the house. Do more kids share rooms? Things like that. I'd be interested. So if you guys can let me know, I'd appreciate that.
Is gadgets the right word? I don't know, I'll have to fire my graphics team. Either way, we're essentially talking about accessories, the things you have in your house that make that house work, even when you're doing the house work. So for example, airflow, right? America's bigger on its overhead fans and air conditioning units. We don't usually use those. I mean, we like to punish ourselves, especially in the summer, but we can crack a window open and it doesn't get oppressively hot. Always. And so we've mostly been fine with this situation. It does mean that insects get in. So daddy longlegs will get in the house and mosquitoes, but it's a small price to pay for not having air conditioning. I actually quite like air conditioning now that I've lived in the US.
Okay, I will say, you guys give us such a hard time for being like behind and stuff. On this, you guys are behind. Why do you not have air conditioning? Because it's amazing. It really is now. And even like central air, even window units are better than nothing. Sorry guys, we win in this. We have AC. We are awesome.
Speaking of insects, you also don't see in Britain those insect screens that you put in the windows, hence why they're getting in. In America, they're virtually in every house, but then again, you know, in Britain, we don't have black widows or brown recluses or the types of mosquitoes that make your face go like this. So I can see why it's justified. I mean, you still get ants, or is that just me? Not sure how they get in, maybe cracks in the wall, or maybe through the plug sockets. The plug sockets, of course, are different in both countries too. In Britain, you have the three-pronged outlet.
I don't know why you guys don't have screens. Like he said, though, you guys don't have as many insects.
And in America, you sometimes have three, but occasionally two, and they're smaller in America than they are in Britain. That's one of the few things about which you can say that. Separate taps, of course, for hot and cold water. Americans combine them all into one. Where's the logic in that? I'm joking. And while we're on the subject of sinks, most British sinks don't have that sort of food waste disposal.
I was gonna say, like, I don't get, like, plumbing on a plumbing stance why you'd run two. Most things, at least in America, obviously, you have the faucet, and all you have to do is tilt it one way, it's cold, tilt it the other way, it's hot, put it up the middle, it's both. I don't understand why you would need both.
Thing that you press the button and it does the noise. Amazing. That was one of the best things I discovered after I didn't discover it. Somebody else came up with the idea and I just used it. But it's amazing. It's just so pleasing to know that all of that gunk gets broken down, and just don't put your hamster in there. I've learned that lesson from someone else. I didn't do it, just read about it on Reddit. Letterboxes. Firstly, Americans don't call them letterboxes, but mailboxes, and typically don't have them on the door, but outside in the garden, yard. The garden/yard is different, often smaller in Britain, but very well kept.
Wait, you guys have your letter boxes on the house, like the old kind that you like have a little basket on the door and you shove the mail through? Some houses here have that, but definitely, yeah, mailboxes. That's our thing. So technically, anyone can go like look in someone's mail if they want it. It's a federal crime. And I guess if you were feeling snoopy, you could do it, but I've never seen anyone do that.
Tub, depending on the family, and just massive yards here with, you know, mesh fences and things like that, or picket fences. Back inside, a lot of properties in the United States will have walk-in closets that are built into the actual walls of the house, whereas in Britain, you bring your own closet/wardrobe to put your clothes in, and that takes up more space, I've just realised. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot every step of the way. Except when it comes to washing machines and dryers. How cool is this? We combine them both into one giant cube, whereas America has two separate cubes. And tea drinkers that we are, we love our kettle.
On the washer and dryer, we have those over here that are starting to become a little bit more common. I always feel like they don't run as well. Maybe I just don't understand I obviously don't understand the technology of it, but like you're shooting water and then the same machine dries it. I don't know. My mind says too American. I don't know. It just baffles me. I like having the separate for each one.
Kettles, don't we? But they're not just any kettles. These are ones you plug in and then hit the switch to turn on the plug, because I forgot to mention that our plug sockets also have switches. And then, you know, you turn it on, don't need a stovetop, and it heats up. Just like that. You've got your water, Bob's your uncle, pour it into a mug, there's your cup of tea. In America, you do have the stovetop kettles, and part of me likes that because it does this really pleasing whistling sound at the end. Mm-hmm. Now, if you were paying attention during that list, you may have noticed that I touched on some of the terminological differences when it comes to housing in either country. And that brings us on to our final entry. It wouldn't be Britain and America if they weren't two countries separated by a common language, and the same is true of the housing world. So let's finish with a rapid fire round looking at those very words. So here in Chicago, I live in a flat, except in America they don't call it flat, it's called an apartment. Something else that you'll find in America though are these condominiums, or condos if you don't fancy saying a word that has condom in it. And we do have those in Britain. They're usually called common hold properties, and I suppose most British people wouldn't go around using that term, whereas you actually hear the term condo quite a lot. It's been suggested to me that I move into a condo, and it sounds good. I mean, when I first heard the term, I thought it sounded like I might be moving onto a lakeside boat or something like that. It is like an apartment, but it's one you would buy. It's real estate. Now, as a child and young adult, I grew up in a house that was known as a semi-detached house. That's when you have a house adjoined to one other house on one side, but not on the other side. In the United States, this is known quite simply as a duplex, which is not a wrestling move. If it is adjoined on both sides with another house, then you are part of a line of houses that are known as terraced houses in Britain. In America, they're known as row houses because they're all in a row. presumably. Then there's council housing in Britain versus the projects in the United States, and that's just another way of saying public housing. To control the electricity flow in Britain, you have the mains power. In America,
yeah, on the duplex, I guess they're kind of called duplexes, but duplexes are more like the single level, very small, maybe 1,200, 1,500 square foot. I know, really small. But then we also have townhomes that are more like 2 stories. And again, they're connected just by one house on one side, but they're a lot bigger. They're like 18 to 2,000 square foot. They look more like an actual house, even though they're separated like by one dividing wall. I'll try to put a picture of one up here to show the difference. But so we also have townhomes, duplexes, apartments, condos. But yeah, we have a lot of different types of houses. My favorite is the single family because I like my privacy. I like having all 4 walls or part of my house. I do live in town though, and I'm pretty close to neighbors. So other than that though, those are my favorite type. I like a house, an actual house, individual. That's what I like.
You have the grid power. And what if you're sick and tired of the place that you're living in and you just want to relocate somewhere else? In America, you would just simply move. In Britain, you'd move house. And on that note, I'm going to move out to my outro transition because this is the end of the video. Let me know in the comments below if you're watching this from your house right now or just if you're not. Leave a comment either way.
So yeah, it was an interesting video. I liked hearing the differences. It seems like there's a good amount of differences, but more so probably like the inside when you go inside the house, just how we do our electrical and the plumbing, probably what we have in it. I'm sure the furniture is different. Obviously, we probably don't have as many teacups or kettles. I don't think a kettle's commonplace for a lot of houses. We have coffee. You're gonna find a coffee pot in every single house, or a Keurig, something like that, because we're huge coffee drinkers. I mean, that's America. So yeah, other than that though, it was a good video. I definitely would like to, if you guys know of any more that do these type of comparisons, if you guys know of any that do like on plumbing or something, I'd be kind of interested in that. Feel free to send me something. That being said though, if you watched it this far, please make sure that you like the video, share, comment, do all that great stuff that you guys know how to do. Other than that, I hope everyone has a great day. Enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys later.